Oh, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Swingman podcast. It's podcast number 101. And as ever, I'm your host, Jordan Ledger, joined us all the time by Louis Halpin and Lewis Howard. Been a bit of a while since the Centurion pod, so there's quite a bit of NBA news to dive into. But we'll jump in, which is pretty normally the hottest topic in the NBA. There's normally not that much. Well, there's normally quite a lot going around with the LA Lakers, and right now they're not in a great position, are they, chaps? They're not even in contention at the minute to make the play-in game, which was sort of the bare minimum that would have been expected. Not even bare minimum. I don't think Laker fans would have been thinking about a play-in game at the start of the season if you asked them. And following the loss to the Mavericks, Frank Vogel came out, and this is the main point we're going to talk about here. And he was just saying, with LeBron out, the Lakers are at a talent deficit to the Mavericks. And you sort of, if you just put that into perspective at the start of the season, it speaks volumes of where the Lakers are right now, doesn't it?
I mean, at the end of the day, when they traded for Russell Westbrook, they got rid of a lot of the core parts of their team. And yes, that made them, you could say, quite top heavy. But I think we all thought the big three that they had would be able to carry them through. And that's obviously not been the case. And then when you look at what they did during like January around the trade deadline, they were picking up people in free agency that other teams had cut from their roster. And if you're doing that as a team who, at the very minimum, wants to be competing for championships, which is what the Lakers always want to do, you're going to have a talent deficit because you're picking up people that literally could not make the rosters of other teams. And obviously, no one saw what's happened coming, and I think they've just got back into the play-in spot because Keldon Johnson absolutely bricked a layup that cost the Spurs the game. But it's still, it's not where they want to be. And I think you'd even ask yourself, do the Lakers really even want to be in the play-in? And personally, I don't think any of them really care whether they're in it or not.
No, to me, I mean, just zeroing in on that particular comment from Vogel, I think obviously after the season that they've had, which we can all agree isn't to the expectations of what we had going into the season, I think there will be a head that will roll coming out of this season. And I think usually more often than not, it does fall to the head coach because it's the easiest one to get rid of, really. Yeah. You can't change an entire roster. You're obviously not going to trade LeBron James or Anthony Davis anyway. And maybe you can't even trade Russell Westbrook. So the sort of playing staff are the ones that don't really experience that as much. But the coach, it usually falls on him because it's an easy replacement, basically. And I think he senses that coming. But I also think he wants to probably throw a little bit of shade towards the front office because, maybe he wasn't fully on board with the whole Russell Westbrook trade, which, looking back now, I think
doesn't seem a Frank Vogel pickup in that regard.
No, because Frank Vogel's strengths have always been defense, and they won a championship based off of defense, really, didn't they? And basically, they gutted all of those players that gave them that. Particularly, I'm thinking Caruso, KCP is another one.
Yeah.
Kuzma was on and off for the Lakers, but he was decent. But they gutted that roster for one player. And to what extent? Why did they really do that? I mean, if they don't get an injury to Anthony Davis last season in the playoffs, you could viably see them beating them, and the Suns went to the NBA Finals, so there's very much a chance that they would have made the NBA Finals last year. So it does seem right now, looking in hindsight anyway, to be a bit of a reactionary move to what was a season I think just costed by injuries. And I think this is another season costed by injuries because Anthony Davis just can't stay healthy. And I think if you're moving forward as the Lakers organization, you've got to think about a bit of damage control here because LeBron will pick where he wants to go, and there's obviously wide speculation that he wants to play with his son. And is Anthony Davis good enough to be the guy to lead you going forward? I don't think he is a top guy, your go-to guy in a team that wins a championship. I think he's probably a secondary player. And also he can't stay healthy, he can't stay on the court, which is the main issue there. So it's a bit of a tricky situation that Rob Pelinka, if he is there anyway, will have to navigate moving forward. But I think he is as much to blame for this, probably the most to blame for this as anyone. But LeBron gets to sign off on all of these as well, so I suppose he doesn't escape that type of blame.
Yeah, I know there was the whole conversation about they had Buddy Hield in place, and Rob Pelinka decided he didn't. Or sorry, this was with DeMar DeRozan. They didn't want to give him the extra year or something along those lines, and so they went for Russ instead. But I think when it comes to the stories like that come out, a lot of the time it's people just trying to leak it out into the media to pass blame to see who they can shift it on and who can get away. But at the end of the day, it's the LeBron, as you say, LeBron's got to sign off on it. Pelinka's obviously the one that's got to go and get it done. And even though you say it's not a Frank Vogel move, he's still obviously got to be a part of the decision making because he's the one that's going to have to coach them.
I just want to circle back quickly. You don't think Anthony Davis is good enough to be the Lakers when LeBron goes? That was the whole point of the signing.
Yeah, no.
That was the whole point of AD coming in. LeBron then guides into the chip and then hands in the keys. And I think definitely Anthony Davis could be the Lakers' main guy. I think
that was a fair thought process to have at the time of the trade because, he'd been dealt quite a poor hand on the Pelicans. Some rosters that weren't very good. He'd managed to sort of carry some of them to the playoffs, some of them to the second round. A lot of the time he missed the playoffs. I'm not sure. I feel like I think the fitness thing is something that's just become more of a concern as his sort of career has gone on, really. I know he was never particularly non-injury prone early on, but you'd think maybe that he'd shirk that a little bit, especially when he sort of went through an entire season, through the whole playoffs and won a championship. Really, you maybe thought he's got that off his back a little bit. I think
it's been the last 2 years they've been really bad for him.
They have been. And I thought he looked a bit bulky coming into the season, actually. I'm not sure if that played into an impact of him being even more injury prone this season than he was last season. He was bad last season, but it wasn't as constant throughout the regular season, and he did play a couple playoff games. He might play in a playing game if they make it, to be fair. But moving aside from the health topic, I just don't think he's aggressive enough. I don't think he's really developed in that type of way that I thought he would do because, if you'd look at his early sort of seasons, his early sort of career statistics, you'd think this guy's the next Tim Duncan or something. I just don't think he's developed to the level I thought he had done, that he can be like a go-to guy. He can probably get you into a playoffs maybe, or like into a play-in, but I don't think you're ever winning anything with him as your best player, personally.
Personally, I think it's more of a health thing than a talent thing. When healthy, I think AD is easily a top 10 player in the league. Definitely not towards the lower end either. And as you say, especially the last 2 years, I think the health just got the better of him, and maybe I think we spoke about this before. It's had just as much of a mental effect on him as it has a physical effect. And so, when we talk about, I think everyone has said at some point they want AD to be more aggressive, and he just doesn't show it. And I think that could be one of the big reasons why he's actually worried about picking up those injuries, because they have happened so frequently.
Yeah, it's not something you want, is it, really?
Yeah, but at the same time, you can't. I'm not saying he is playing scared, but you can't play scared going up, especially as the big man of your team. It definitely is even more important.
So I was just looking at some of these Lakers scenarios in terms of making the play-ins. And like the top headline part of this was the Lakers' odds of winning the championship at pre-season was plus 350 in America. So I think that equates to like 3 to 1, 4 to 1 in sort of UK betting scene. And now in America it's plus 18,000. So it's a humongous jump in terms of where people are putting them. And it's rightly so, but I still think it's never ever as bad as it is. I think it's not as bad as people are making out. I fully appreciate in basketball it's a completely different ballgame in that regard. But I think that if you do get all three guys on the court in the playoff run, people were only talking about this 2-3 weeks ago and saying that no team would still want to come up against the Lakers in that regard.
No team would want to come against
that bad,
but no way is anyone saying, even with all three healthy, I wouldn't say they get into the conference finals.
Oh, no.
Let alone even get to the NBA.
Oh yeah, I'd also agree with that. So there's
and obviously that's winning 2 playoff games compared to not even being in the playoffs. So there is a massive difference there. But I think the main issue and the reason why people think it's pretty dire is if you can't. At the end of the day, in the off season, they're probably going to have to trade Westbrook at all costs, like whatever they can get, even if it's nothing. They've just got to trade him because it's not working. And if you're stuck with him for another year, I hate to use that phrase for a former MVP, and he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But at the end of the day, him and LeBron haven't worked. Him and the Lakers haven't worked, and LeBron is not getting any younger, and they'll be stuck with potentially stuck with Westbrook for another year, and that's just another year gone, where they've wasted a year of LeBron, who's still, he's potentially going to lead the league in scoring. He's still in the very, very tail end of his prime now, but he's kind of still in his prime.
It's sort of hard for me. I was just going to say, it's sort of hard for me to remember a trade that has gone quite as a big sort of blockbuster trade that has gone quite as poorly as this one, because I'm not sure if it is just the sort of environment he's in, or if he has physically dropped off, or he's always had decision-making issues, but they seem to have got worse this season. So I'm not sure if it's a combination of all those things or whatever. Probably is, but he's been really, really bad. And I don't want to sort of pile on him, because I think he's had enough. Sort of, he knows he's not playing well. I know he knows he's not playing well, but I can't think of sort of a season drop off like this in quite a while, because he wasn't even that bad on the Wizards, and he was quite good on the Rockets as well. Not to the extent where they were going to win a championship or anything like that, but he was pretty good.
Well, I'm not even sure if it's as much of him dropping off himself as just the fit. The fit with him and this Lakers team is just absolutely horrific, and you can talk about it now. No one saw it being as bad as it is, but we're here, and I don't think he's fallen off massively from last year. I just think the constant trying to mesh and make it work, and chopping and changing things, and all the media piling on as well. I just think this was a car crash waiting to happen, and we've got the result of it now.
So do you think, genuinely right now, if you're pressed for an answer, sort of not gun to your head, but if you was going to make the claim, do you think the Lakers will make the play-in or not?
I think they will. I think they'll make the final spot. It's tough because, one, I'm not sure the players actually want to, or a lot of the players. I don't think. I definitely.
When you say they don't want to, surely they want to. Why would they not?
I don't think.
Do you think they're doing it out of protest to try and get Vogel out, or just?
No, I just don't think LeBron wants to play any more games than he has to when his aspiration is to win a championship, and they're not going to win a championship this year. AD has been injured for long periods. I don't think he wants to come back and play when they've got no chance of winning. It's bad to say with players like that, but it's true. And a lot of the players, I think, have become disenfranchised with the team, with the organisation. So when you've got a squad like that, do you think they're going to push through? Maybe not, but will the talent take them over the line? Obviously LeBron still wants to lead the league in scoring, win the scoring title, and I think he's actually got to play he's got to play 3 more games to even qualify for it. So he's playing in at least 3 more games. It'll probably be more. And I think the last 5 of the last 7 games for them are against teams that are above 500. I think other than the Suns and the Thunder, everyone's still got something to play for they're playing against. So it's definitely going to be hard, but I think the backlash that would come from them looking like they've down tools, which obviously I don't think they want to win, but I don't think they're going to go that far, would be too great that they will still, put a lot into these games and manage to get it over the line.
So, from what I've seen and from how I'm looking, I can't imagine. I understand that from the point of view of LeBron only wants to win a chip. They're obviously not going to win the chip this year, and he doesn't want to play as many games. But I can't see his mentality where he doesn't want to make the playoffs. He's only missed it 3 times out of his 19-year career, and all of the things like that. And when I was looking through it, the remaining schedule, they play the Jazz, the Pelicans, the Nuggets, the Suns, the Warriors, the Thunder, and then the Nuggets again. Now, the main issue being with the Spurs, they're tied on terms of their head-to-head record, and Spurs at the moment have the better record. And the Pelicans...
No, the Spurs don't anymore. The Spurs don't.
Oh, no, yeah, but that's the thing. So, but if you look at... as we know and as we've listened to before, Kevin O'Connor, aka Kevin Obama from The Ringer and the NBA, they have their lottery odds model. They're like machine, similar to the trade machine that ESPN used to do. And when you look at this through here, the Spurs have a 61% chance of making the West play-in, and the Lakers only have a 44%, according to their whole stature things. And you got the Timberwolves at 91 and the Pelicans at 95. So you're sitting there and you're thinking, I can't. I think the Spurs will be more hungry though to get into these play-ins than the Lakers will, despite the whole thing. And I think that's going to be the key issue, especially when you see and you arc back to who they're playing. Some of these teams are still sort of fighting for seedings in the main, like in the actual playoffs. So it's no easy task that face them. And right now I'd probably say they're not going to get it. That's where I'd lie. I'd lie against it.
Yeah, I mean everything I said leads towards that conclusion, but I don't know. I think it's just, and there'll be a few games where LeBron will go for, even though he's gone for 30.
But even though he does, he's done
yeah,
it.
They're still losing. I think
he's gone for 50 at a makeshift centre and they'll lose a game. Like,
he'll have a few big games, and I think they'll win some. Maybe I'm wrong. Everything I said leads to it being the Spurs.
Yeah, I think if you're a betting man in the NBA, you could probably go on the over on LeBron's points, but that's all I'd touch. I think would be it from the Lakers standpoint.
I lean with George. I just don't trust that team whatsoever. I mean, I can't say I've watched a great deal of the Spurs this season anyway, but they are a young and hungry team that I know of. Obviously going to be very well coached by Pop. Yeah, I just think they'll have the extra motivation, and I think the fixtures on us are on their side slightly. But, it could go either way. In any case, I think whoever the Lakers come up against in the play-in, I think they'll lose to. I don't like that team whatsoever, and I think it's going to need some wholesale changes come the summer, whatever they can do anyway.
I mean, we normally talk about this when we ramp up towards the end of the season, and we're pretty much there now with a handful of games or so left. But when I look back at the regular season over and unders that we did, getting the Lakers as the under, I was quite nice of. I think that the only one that's going to let me down is going to be the Bucks going plus 55. I don't think they're going to make that, which is going to be heartbreaking after losing out on a one-game Warrior one last year. But
I think mine was pretty good, apart from I think I had the Nets on the over maybe, and that is a catastrophe. So
yeah, but yeah, we'll talk about them. We'll talk about them when the season actually does draw to the regular season does draw to a close. Anyway, now let's switch across to the other team that plays at the Is it the Crypto.com arena? I can't actually remember what it is. It's not Staples. It's obviously not the Staples Center anymore. It's Crypto.com, I believe. We'll talk about the Clippers. Playoff P coming back in fine form, 34 points on his opening night in the return. Just how big of a boost is this to the Clippers, and where do we actually see them going in sort of end of season run?
So, I think firstly we have to take out the aspect that Paul George was, of course, playing against the Utah Jazz, which is his favourite team to play against. This guy has a absolutely stunning record against the Utah Jazz when it matters, even though his playoff P moniker, shall we say, was widely taken the piss out of at the time. But he seemed to turn up against the Utah Jazz when it matters and got them to a Western Conference Finals they really had no business being in. So putting that aside, I feel like I kind of have to work this out at some stage, because I've probably said too many players are top 10 players, but I do actually believe Paul George is a top 10 player in this league.
We can go through them now quick if you want.
Oh, that's going to be off the dome.
Yeah, off
the dome. It's going to be.
We've got KD, Giannis,
LeBron,
Embiid, Jokic, LeBron, Kawhi,
Luka.
6.
Luka. That's 7.
Luka.
So now maybe it gets a little bit tricky.
Yeah, but there's going to be someone that's obvious that would kill.
Harden.
Andy Davis. You just say Andy Davis.
Andy Davis. Harden.
That's nice.
I'd take Paul George over Harden. I'd take
Paul George over Harden.
Yeah, I would do. At this stage,
they're close. Paul George and Harden.
Just Steph. Yeah, I forgot about Steph.
Yeah, there we go. There's the obvious.
Personally, I think he's just probably in that 10 to 15 range. Paul George.
Yeah, he's. I mean.
He's not a concrete top 10. He's not a concrete top 10. On his day, you can make the argument just purely because of the two-way. But
yeah, but he's also one of the few players in there that's genuinely carried the team through a playoff series. But I digress. This is getting off topic anyway.
Yeah.
Obviously, it'll be a massive boost to that team, which has done quite well, even with his sort of prolonged absence. Kawhi's been out all season. They traded for Norm Powell, and he's not even really been able to play for them very much either. So, I think Ty Lue's done wonders with that team to sort of keep them above the Lakers anyway, and they're in the 8th spot right now. If Paul, and because the play-in tournament is structured so 7 play 8, and whoever wins. I think it's 7 win the first game. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you're the Timberwolves, you would be quite worried if Paul George is back, especially if Norm Powell's back. And I'm not going to lie, I think I have seen pictures, and I'm not sure if this is a new pictures or if it's just Twitter or whatever. Misinformation is rife these days of Kawhi Leonard doing a bit of shoot around.
Kawhi is not playing again this season. He's not playing again.
Kawhi was trending on Twitter.
I also saw these, but I don't believe it.
I mean, just sort of put out your logic for the second, and I agree. I don't see why they would bring him back for the season unless they think the West is sort of weak enough this year to maybe make a move. Not sure. But regardless, if you're coming up against the already pretty decent Clippers team, not amazing, they're good on both sides. Reggie Jackson makes me laugh because he's just got such an irrational confidence. He actually views himself as like a star player when he's just okay. But he's been playing well this season. And then you add sort of Paul George back into the mix, and probably not full health wise. Obviously, he's been out for a long time. And if they were to get Kawhi back as well, obviously he wouldn't be at full health capacity either. But that's a team you wouldn't want to play if you're in the play-in, certainly. And if you're the top 2 teams, it's going to be difficult because they're not going to be at full capacity health-wise. But I think if they were, I think that's the best team in the West.
Clippers. They're definitely up there. If everyone's
the way I see it, the way I see things, right? Kawhi went under the knife in like early July, right, for a partially torn ACL.
It's dubious because they kind of kept it hidden for a while, didn't they? But
didn't they come out and then like months later they said he went under the knife in like July?
Okay,
I think if I base it off this, right? So if you're saying if the whole thing, if you do a quick Google search on it, it'll always say July 13 is the date anyway. So with Kawhi Leonard, if you do that, you're approaching sort of 9-month areas now, which is common practice normally for a return on an ACL for general people, not elite but sports stars, right? Granted, Kawhi obviously has had his injuries in the past. They're going to be very careful of how they manage him. The way I see it, I think that if they go through and they make the play-ins and they progress through them, I think that they'd try and slowly ease him in towards the playoffs. And then depending on how they do, they'll use him as a factor in that. But I think if they make the playoffs, he might get just literally 5 minutes off the bench. I don't think it'll be a case of that necessarily, but that's how I could see it. And then if they progress into the next round, then you're looking at just building them up a bit more and a bit more.
Yeah.
Because the West, again, if you're looking at this is obviously with Paul George maintaining his full health in that regard as well. Like if Paul George goes down, there's not a chance they're going to risk Kawhi in any form anyway. But I'm saying if you can get both of them on the court, then you're looking at the Clippers as being genuine contenders for the West. Because those two as a duo are better than anybody else that's there.
Yeah, that was my thinking as well. I think maybe that could be perceived as disrespectful for the Suns because they are so great, but the best team in the West. But it's just it's the tandem, isn't it?
It's the tandem. Well, it's the two-way wings that they just wouldn't be able to deal with.
If we're talking about teams healthy and at full strength, as you say, don't want to be disrespectful to the Suns, but I'd take the Warriors over the field. Over the field, but over everyone else at the moment.
I would, but the Warriors.
I'm not on the Warriors.
But they've had so many injuries that I don't think they'll be fully healthy in time to be able to stop a team that's been on the steamroll or that had been steamrolling like the Suns. But a fully healthy Warriors, I'd take over any other team in the West. I think.
I mean, the thing is, I think the Suns. What sort of win total are they on right now? I looked on it the other day.
I think they're 62 and 14.
So there's a very viable possibility they could get to maybe 65, 66 wins this season, you would say. They've got about 5-6 games left. I would wager that the sort of previous teams that have got to those win totals in the regular season have at least got the NBA Finals. Like, if not won the championship. That is like a pretty...
Look, if you told me to pick now, what team do I think's coming out out of the West right now, I'd pick the Suns. I think most people would pick the Suns.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if it was this Warriors team was healthy for most of the year, they didn't have all the problems they've had, I would pick the Warriors. But maybe that's just going off of star power and them having Steph and previous history. Maybe I'm not giving CP3, Booker, and especially DeAndre Ayton enough credit. I don't know, but that's just where I'd lie with it.
I think I said a couple of months ago I preferred the Suns' overall team to the Warriors, and I think I still remain on that, to be honest. I mean, Jordan Poole's development over this season has been really impressive. I think he's getting to the point where he's not just sort of like a cute sixth man, you know. He's like a fully fledged, could be an all-star in a couple of years type player. But other than that, they don't really move. I can't believe Andrew Wiggins was an all-star starter. Like, it genuinely boggles my mind to this day.
The main issue is Draymond was out for so long, and then Steph's been out. Their offense has just fallen off.
But Steph's not really been good this season. For a bit, like 6-8 week period.
That as well. You're right. He has been down, but I will say, I think a massive effect of that has been how long Draymond was out for. I think he is the main. It's weird to say he's a playmaker, but he is the main playmaker of that team. And you look at them when they were healthy, and everyone thought Steph was going to win MVP, and they were going to be the team to beat. And ever since the injuries, their offense just fell off an absolute cliff, and they're nowhere near the team that we all thought they were going to be.
Draymond gave a very uncharacteristic turnover late in the game yesterday as well against the Suns, to be fair, which led to them winning. And Clay's been really, really not himself since he came back, which I think is to be expected coming back from 2 very long injuries. But he stunk up the joint last night.
I think that's
he really did.
I think that's one thing when we talk about AD potentially coming back for the Lakers or Kawhi coming back for Clippers.
Yeah,
I think especially over the past couple seasons, we've seen how difficult it is for teams who haven't played with a particular player, especially someone with the gravity like a Kawhi or an AD. It's so difficult to integrate them back in quickly and get up to speed. And that's why I wouldn't pick someone like the Warriors now, because I think it's just too late. I don't think you can put it all together in the playoffs and suddenly be better than a team that, like the Suns, who have been motoring so well throughout the year.
You could say the same about the Nuggets as well. I'm not sure if they're really going to bother with Jamal Murray now. I know there was a couple weeks ago about it.
I don't think either Jamal Murray or Michael Porter Jr. are going to be coming back.
So it just kind of lead like a bit of a course for the Suns as the dominant team to make it. And I think maybe you'd be like, the Mavs might have a little bit of a say about that. They've been very good this second half of the season, but I just think the Suns have more. And I think that duo is really sort of formidable, especially in fourth quarters. So I can't see anything else other than them at least going to the NBA Finals, whether they win it.
Yeah, I think most people would say now that it's the Suns coming out of the West.
Yeah,
I'd agree. Anyway, moving on from that, we normally talk about this every year towards the latter stages of the regular season, but we'll have a little chat on MVP and other end of season awards. We should probably actually we did do predictions right at the start of the year.
We did do predictions, yeah. And I was so confident with the Steph MVP when it started rolling, but that fell off.
Let me have a deep dive, because they'll be down at Instagram at Swingman Pod if you're not following. So I mean, if you two, MVP, we'll go off the bat. Whilst I have a little deep dive for these, where you putting your money on MVP currently?
Well, I said this was a few podcasts ago. I think it was like a couple months ago. I said I thought Giannis would be the one to end up winning, and even though I still think he's third, the Philly Bucks game that just happened, I think when it comes to the end of the season, the narrative part really takes over, and I think when you look at that, it hurts because the 3 front runners right now are Jokic, Embiid, and I think everyone's pretty sold on that, and that. The narrative part, I think, hurts Embiid the most at the moment, because they played the Nuggets a few games ago and they lost, and they played the Bucks last game, and the last play of the game is literally Giannis blocking Embiid to win the game for the Bucks. And those kind of things towards the end of the season, when all of them are putting up such good numbers and it's so hard to look between them, those kind of things sometimes tip it over the edge. And I know ESPN did a straw poll with, I think it was 100 writers, but regardless of the number, it was a lot of ESPN writers. or writers that ESPN did the straw poll with, and Jokic was still number one by. It wasn't a massive margin from Embiid, but in terms of the first place votes they gave, there was quite a disparity between Jokic and Embiid. Personally, I think it comes down to just what style of basketball you prefer, to be honest, and who you prefer. If maybe the Bucks or the 76ers get the number one seed in the East, or if Jokic manages to get the Nuggets to, I think they can probably get third if the results go their way. I think second's probably a bit too far. I don't think they will get third. I think the Mavs are really rolling now. But if that were to happen, then maybe that could swing it as well. Personally, I said a couple months ago that Giannis would end up winning it, but looking at it now, I'd probably give it to Jokic. I think I just prefer the way he plays, and I just prefer watching him to the others. But I fully understand why you would give it to someone like Embiid, who's so unstoppable, or Giannis, who is even probably like a top 3 or 4 candidate for Defensive Player of the Year as well, as he always is. And I think the fatigue of seeing him do the same thing year on year probably goes against him. Or it doesn't go against him, but doesn't help his case at this point.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at MVP odds, it's been between Jokic and Embiid now for so long. I agree with you to some extent that it'll change narratives, but I think that in most scenarios like this, especially with how close these two have been in terms of numbers and performances and things like that, I don't think that one particular play will have that much of an impact on Embiid's case. But I mean, when you look at it again, the last time that we spoke, Embiid was slightly favourite, and now you look at it and Jokic is the slight favourite. So I think it will toss and change between the rest of the season now. And I think, again, I've got the slight biased viewpoint on it anyway from preferring Philly in this regard, but I'd be quite surprised if Embiid didn't win it this year. I'd want him to win it as well, and I think he deserves to win it, but I couldn't fault it if they gave it to Jokic anyway. I do think that when you look at it as well, that the team record should have an impact, and unfortunately it sucks for Jokic in that regard, but I think that if Philly come out of it second or third, I couldn't begrudge them for it going to Embiid.
I don't think it takes away from Jokic as much as it usually does for a year in the NBA because of the people that are missing on his team and how well they're still doing. So it's kind of like it takes it away because they're not one of the best. Like they're not first or second in the West, but at the same time, they are in a really good position considering the players that are missing from that team.
I mean, yeah, and then I just found all of our posts that we did before and our predictions for them, and so you two both said Steph for MVP, and when you look at it, he's like plus 30,000 now, and I mean mine's not that much better anyway because I said Luka for MVP and he's plus 8,000. So
that's a tale of two differing seasons there when you look at Steph and Luka, because Steph started off so well and Luka really. It's not that he started off super slow, but he's really picked up his MVP case in the last couple months, and now he'd potentially be pushing to be. After those three, he's probably the fourth. Maybe you could argue Devin Booker or John Moran.
Yeah, he's the fifth.
I'd probably have him fourth personally for me.
The way it runs is Jokic and Embiid have been 1 and 2 all year, and then it's been Giannis, Devin Booker, Luka, and John Moran. That's how.
DeRozan had a decent shout.
DeRozan had a shout, but then again, he's tailed off as
and the Bulls kind of tailed off a little bit.
So.
I do think Devin Booker has a semi decent shout. I wouldn't put him in a real conversation with it, but he does have the point that usually
he deserves his name thrown in the hat.
Yeah,
I think there was something along the lines of it was like any person that's had 25, 5, and 5 as a stat line, and their team's winning like 80% of their games. I think they've almost always won MVP. That player. So when you look at it from that sense, he's definitely got a case. But I just think the other three. A lot of people don't like using the eye test so much, and they look to like the stats of the players and the records of the team. But when you look at the eye test, I think Jokic and Embiid, especially, and I would put Giannis in that conversation as well, stand out compared to the rest of the field when you're watching them play.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll go on to Rookie of the Year in terms of the next award that we'll speak about. And I mean, again, in terms of the predictions that we did before, I said Cade Cunningham for mine. Louis, you had Jalen Green, and Lewis, you had Cade Cunningham as well. So, I mean, when you're looking at the sort of the markets for it, they've all fancied Evan Mobley, and rightly so, to be Rookie of the Year. But then it's also a toss-up between Cade Cunningham, Scotty Barnes, and a few others in terms of that scenario. I think the injury of Evan Mobley is the one that then, again, at this time of the year, people think about. But I think it should realistically go to Evan Mobley.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be too many arguments against Evan Mobley here. I think Louis, especially, you like him.
I do like him, but I wouldn't pick him. I think
I
I go Scotty Barnes at this stage, actually, purely because I think he's had a bit more of a load on him than Evan Mobley has. I think Evan Mobley's got generally less offensive work to do in the team that he's in comparison to Scotty Barnes, who's been doing quite a few sort of isolation plays recently. He's been given the ball and asked to do stuff with it, and also on the other end, he's a very good defensive player. I think Evan Mobley is right now a better defensive player, but I think they're both going to be really good on that end. But yeah, I think I've grown to be more impressed with Scotty Barnes. I just didn't expect that level of offensive ability from him in the beginning. So I think just the sort of two-way impact he's had, and the fact that I feel like he's carrying a heavier load on his team, has kind of shifted me towards that. But I do think Cade, you two predicted Cade, I do think he has a decent shout for it.
Because he's got a decent shout, but it's the issue again with then when you look at the teams as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I think Cade as well is another one of those players that as the season's gone on, gone from strength to strength.
100%. Yeah, got 34 last night, I think.
I think if I was to state my claim now, I'd go Evan Mobley is what I think that he'll actually go to. But
they're all going to be very good players. I will say that they're all going to be really, really good.
You can go off that. Moving into most improved player of the year. This is without doubt. I think every year it's the hardest one to predict because it's normally you just have to pick someone that's coming out of left field.
This year,
obviously, that's the difference with it. This one is the other one. So at the start of the year, Lewis, you said Tyrese Halliburton.
That joke.
Yeah, Louis, you had Cam Reddish, and I had SGA. So none of which I think are anywhere near sort of the.
I really thought the Kings were going to be like, Halliburton, you're playing next to Aaron Fox, kick on for us. But no, they decided actually we're going to trade you, even though you look like such a promising young player, and give you to the Pacers. And it's just
Yeah, it's but again, this is what it is with MIP. It's always a really, really tough one to try and crack down. And you only really go off of sort of you try and get it based off of a player that's not really a star in any way, that then has that's had like a good end of the year that then you think will have a really breakout year. But then in some cases, it's a star that then kicks on and becomes a superstar. Which is what Ja Morant's done.
I would say, I don't know how it is in other sports, but at least in football or soccer, as some people call it, especially growing up playing it grassroots, if you get a most improved player, it's like a pity award, and it really feels like you're underselling.
So a Sunday league,
like giving him the most
crap kid that
player.
Can't make the squad gets most improved.
Yeah, and it's like he's had such an unbelievable season, and he is like a top 6 MVP candidate, and at the end of it, you're just giving him a most improved, which is obviously a very good thing to get. But at the same time, you kind of feel bad that's what he's getting. But trophies are individual trophies are individual trophies, but they're still one of the main contenders for the big one at the end of the year. So
it's true.
I mean, to kind of there isn't really much to chat about though. He's just going to be Ja Morant.
I agree. But DeJounte Murray, if it was any other year, he'd be in with a shout.
I tell you what,
I would. Yeah.
If you look at my previous picks for most improved player, it's like a year or two on. It happens because I picked DeJounte Murray when he was coming off his big injury because I really thought he'd kick on, and it's happened this year.
Why don't you do Halliburton next year?
I just got to pick Halliburton for the next couple of years, and he'll eventually get.
To be fair, Tyrese Maxey has been really good as well. He's really
Tyrese Maxey's a shout, but again, you just unfortunately it's the same thing with the sort of the Luka one. You're just never going to get near Ja Morant in terms of the season he's put up. So yeah, there's not really much else to deliberate. One of my favourite awards to always talk about is the NBA Defensive Player of the Year. And
Defensive Player
I
of the Year
think this
mad.
year it won't be going Rudy Gobert. Is what
No,
I'm
it won't.
saying.
And the one thing is, I think, is really interesting with Defensive Player of the Year. If you want to look at how flip-floppy these awards end up being, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Marcus Smart was like 7th, 8th, something like that, the chance to win it. And Robert Williams, who's on his team, was higher up, but still, I still don't think he was in the options of being the favourite. And then in the last 3 weeks, the odds for Marcus Smart to win it have just flown down. And now I think he's the odds-on favourite. George,
Wow, I didn't know
that.
Well, the one that I'm looking at is Bam Adebayo being the
Okay, yeah, I know Bam was right there with him, but he flew down. It's been like
Marcus
weeks.
Smart is it depends on where you look at it as well. Marcus Smart is also really up there. So
personally, I think I would actually go with Marcus Smart myself, because the Celtics have, especially in the second half of the season, by far and away been the best defensive team in the NBA, and a lot of people look at Robert Williams, and rightfully so, for that, because of how the Celtics play and how he gets to be that sort of he hasn't got a free role, but he kind of sits on like that. He sat on the corner and got to collapse and make the play where needed when people were driving in, and that also let Al Horford play the way he was able to play against the opposing team's big man, which is why he fits well at power forward for the Celtics, but didn't for the 76ers because they had Embiid there with him. The only thing I would say that would maybe go against it is, and this is a very small sample size, but the Celtics have just lost 2 games in a row without Robert Williams, and I think it has had, or it will have, a massive effect on them while he's not there and how they play defense. But I think Marcus Smart for that Celtics team, who are the best defensive team in the NBA, is the motor and the engine room for them on defense, and it's him and his attitude that helps propel them, obviously along with the other players, to where they are, and so that's why I'd give it to him.
I'm just looking at this now, and I mean, I would say I agree with all of the standpoints, but I was just looking down the Player of the Year history for Defensive Player of the Year, and I assume that this is where either this list ends or when this award was first initiated. But in 1995, Gary Payton won it. Ever since, I don't think a guard has won the Defensive Player of the Year.
That is one of the big things, and it's because a lot of the time,
because it's big man clearing, like Rudy Gobert, who just stands on the basket, does nothing else.
People look at the rim protection, and when it comes to defending, a lot of the time, I think I said this a while ago, one of the ways that you can defend multiple players is by being the big man that protects the paint and protects the rim, and that's a lot of the time they're also the stalwart and the main guy for your team's defense. But for me, when I look at the Celtics, even though Robert Williams allows Al Horford to play the way he plays on defense and has such an important role, the stalwart and the centerpiece and the guy that motivates everyone is Marcus Smart, and that's why I give it to him.
I would agree 100%. I'm really surprised that Bam's the odds-on favourite, because I just checked and he's going to miss near on 30 games of this season, which seems like quite a lot to give someone an award still. I mean, I think I agree he's been really good defensively and just been really good overall for that Miami Heat team.
I mean, Mikal Bridges is up there as well, but
Jaren Jackson Jr., is he up there? I
mean,
he's
up the 7th, 8th favourite though.
Yeah, I think Mikal Bridges definitely deserves a shout. And I would say as well, even though George loves to bash him, the Utah Jazz, I think they've played a few games without Rudy Gobert. The difference is absolutely enormous.
I'll bash Rudy Gobert for it. There's no denying. I've always maintained he's an excellent defensive player in that regard. But my whole argument was that it's what the Marcus Smart one is there, is that if you actually talk about as a defender, he's only defending a center. He's never capable of defending anyone else.
Yeah, but
that was always my. But
that is your guy that you. No, I know,
but
when he's not there, they're so much worse.
Bam could Bam can defend a wing if he needed to.
He's
He
more
has lateral
versatile,
movement.
yeah.
Rudy Gobert has no lateral movement.
He is the best rim protector in the NBA. So,
I mean, a lot of
well,
players
he is.
would
There's
agree
no one
with-
there. He definitely is. He's
A
definitely
lot
the
of
best rim
players
protector
would
in the
probably agree with George. A lot of players seem to
Yeah, look,
tend to
I know,
disrespect Rudy Gobert.
I know people don't like him, and especially come playoffs,
I
questions
mean, yeah.
have to be asked. I fully agree, but this is a regular season award, and at the end of the day,
Yeah,
he is fantastic for them. But I'm not even advocating for him to win it this year. I think Marcus Smart should win.
yeah, they've not been very good defensively this year, really.
No.
Yeah, they're
Going
not.
by
They haven't
standards.
been as good defensively.
And when you look back again, so before we move on for the next one, it says everything that you need to know that we all picked Anthony Davis as our defensive.
Yeah, that's tragic. That is absolutely tragic.
Anyway, moving on. 6th man of the year. I believe I absolutely nailed this one. Tyler Hero. There's no debating that he's going to end up winning it, even though he's absolutely not a 6th man of the year and the award needs changing. I don't think you can say someone is. I don't know what his average minutes are actually, but you can't put someone down, I think, as a 6th man of the year that plays like almost 30 minutes a game. I'm gonna look at what he's played on.
I'll be honest.
NBA
If you
reference
looked
now,
at the
but-
history of the people that have won 6th man of the year, I guarantee they're not. Most
Probably
of them
is,
aren't
but
6th
for me
minutes.
that defeats the purpose of a 6th man of the
Yeah,
year.
it's fair point.
Like it's Tyler Hero on Basketball References. Other nicknames is Bucket, Boy Wonder, and Baby Go. But like, where is it? Yeah, so we're looking at it. It will say minutes played on here, won't it? Yeah, minutes played. He's played 32.6 minutes a game. That's
And
just
he
like
finishes games.
yeah, and he finishes games. I think there needs to be, and it'd be harsh to do it in the way, but I think they need to introduce sort of like a minute cap of which you can then actually qualify to be a 6th man of the year. Because like Kelly Oubre Jr., Montrez is a bit different, but all of those that are even near him in terms of none of them are near him on the odds, but I can't claim a 6th man of the year to someone that finishes games and plays almost 35 minutes for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it always happens, though.
Louis, you had Jordan Poole down as your 6th man of the year, and Lewis, you had Jordan Clarkson down as your 6th man of the year. So
yeah, all good shouts to be honest.
all good shouts.
So
from
yeah,
it.
Tyler Hero, 100%.
Yeah, purely because of the stuff that you've been doing for Miami this year, it's not really debating it. And then the final one will be the NBA Coach of the Year. So at the start of it, I had Eric Spoelstra down.
This is one of my worst picks.
We had Rick Carlisle and Lewis had Billy Donovan, I believe. Yeah,
Man,
Lewis
I
had
really
Billy
thought
Donovan.
that was coming in at one point. I really thought Monty Williams was coming in.
So, you really thought what?
I really thought Billy Donovan was coming in.
I thought you really thought
I
Monty Williams was coming in. I was going to say, yeah,
No,
Monty Williams will be coming in.
I might have said that because the next thing I was going to say is Monty Williams is definitely winning it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
think
really thought like halfway through the season, maybe a bit before halfway through, I was like, I've smashed it, but no.
Yeah, I mean, there are honourable mentions for Eric Spoelstra for I can't remember what's the first name of Memphis.
Taylor Jenkins.
Yeah, that's it. And then big stuff at Cleveland. But when you're looking at it in that regard, it's just going to be Monty Williams.
Yeah.
There's no really
Yeah.
there's no
To
real
be fair,
debate on that.
Celtics coach, I think deserves a bit of credit for turning that round mid-season.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah, he probably does, but I mean, he can get credit, but he's not going to out Monty Williams.
No,
So,
100%.
and it's quite funny when you look at some of the history of the coach of the years, and you look at Tom Tibbs last year, and then what he's doing now. Nick Nurse and the Raptors, bit of a different scenario. Coach Bud, granted in the regular season, then goes on and.
I don't think your boy Doc Rivers is coming anywhere close.
Doc Rivers will not be. On this list that I'm looking at now, he's like 9th favourite, but I think that's doing
I think it's
wonders for him.
a bit generous.
Yeah, I think it is as well. But unless either of you have got anything else you want to talk about, we'll wrap that one up there.
No, I think I've said everything that I wanted to say.
Yep, same.
Awesome. Right, well, thank you very much for listening and watching. If you're not already, subscribe to the YouTube channel that you'd be watching this on, or if not, go and drop us a sub over there. We are going to be putting all of these on there from now on. And if you are just listening to us on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever it is, please be sure to drop a subscription on that and leave a review because it does help us out more than you can imagine. And yeah, on our socials, we're at Swingman Pod on everything, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Drop us a follow on there, and we're always engaging. So yeah, we're on there. Thank you very much for listening, and we will end that one there. See you.